Welcome to Storytelling with Lindsay Bednar. I can hear you just fine.
Okay, I don't know what happened, but I just went out and came back in.
Okay. Well, thank you for your patience, Dr. Chapman.
You're welcome. I know these things are nice when they work.
Right. Which is some of the time.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I have been a fan of your work for over 20 years. I think I discovered the 5 love languages right in my late teens.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got early on.
I got
That's good.
Yeah. And
All right.
good thing, because I found a partner whose love languages matched my own. So
Oh, okay. That makes it easier.
Yes. I was so excited. I'm a parent of 2 now. So I'm so excited to learn of the release of your book, 5 Traits to a Healthy Family. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
It's a fantastic book. I've already read it, reread it. I am dog-eared some pages that I'll come back to many times.
Good.
Yeah. So many nuggets. You've been involved in family counseling for 45 years, is it? Over 40?
Yeah, around that, maybe a little longer.
So what led you to that area of service?
I kind of got pushed into it, to be honest with you. I work on a church staff as an associate pastor, and I was teaching classes on marriage and family and that sort of thing, and people wanted to talk. And when I came through seminary, they didn't even offer a master's in counseling. They had about 4 or 5 courses, and I took all of them, just thinking, I need to learn what I can. But I never intended for this to be a major part of my ministry. But it turned out it became the major part of my ministry. So that's how it happened. Year after year, it just grew and grew. So, yeah.
Wow. God had his hand in that, I'm sure.
Yep, you're right.
Throughout your career, you have written and contributed to over 20 books, if I am accurate on that. It's a long list, I saw. And as a publisher myself, I connect with aspiring authors all the time. So I would love to know, what is it that inspires you to write each book?
All of my books grew out of my counseling. They're on different topics, obviously, but they grew out of my counseling. And I had discovered insights while counseling other people and found them to be helpful. And at some juncture, I felt like, if I could put this concept in a book, I could help a lot of people I would never have time to see in my office. So that's what motivated me to write all the books that I've written. It's just an effort to touch more lives than I can touch on a one-on-one basis. But I didn't really set out to be an author. I mean, that was not. I didn't even think about that for a number of years until after I had begun to discover some of these concepts in my counseling room and also in teaching on marriage and family, that I realized these things could help other people. So that's what motivated me.
Yeah, and you saw repeating patterns, I would assume, probably pretty early on, right? As you were meeting with people.
Yeah, the love languages, for example, when I discovered that the first time years ago, that what made one person feel loved didn't make another person feel loved. Because the husband she would say, I feel like he doesn't love me, and he would say, I don't understand that. I do this and this and this and this and this. Why would you not feel loved? So I knew he was sincere. In his mind, he was loving his wife, but it wasn't connecting. And I just kept hearing those stories. And so eventually I just took time to sit down and read several years of notes that I made and asked myself, when someone said, I feel like my spouse doesn't love me, what did they want? What were they complaining about? And their answers fell into 5 categories. So, and then I started using it in my counseling, and then it affirmed, wow, this is important. If people can get this simple concept, it's going to help their marriage.
And in all these years later, it has continued to sell even more books each year than it did in the previous year, correct?
It's amazed me. It's sold. They told me the other day it's sold 20 million copies now. It's been published in 60 languages all over the world. I just, people ask me how do I explain that. I said, well, the short answer is God, and the long answer is God. I said I couldn't have made that happen if I wanted to.
Oh, so it was such affirmation that his plans are far greater than any that we could have on our own.
Absolutely.
So, what does your writing process look like? Because I talk with so many different people and they say, well, sometimes I sit down and it just has to be a stream of consciousness. Obviously, with yours, you had a lot of notes to sift through, but is this something that you sit down and work through pretty quickly, or is this a labor of love that takes place over a period of time?
What I have done through the years is to take Thursday, typically Thursday, as a writing day. And I say to my office, if there's an emergency, always call me. I'll drop everything and come. But otherwise, I take the morning and the afternoon on Thursdays to write. It takes longer to get books written like that. I know people who go off for 3 weeks and just seclude themselves and write a book in 3 weeks. I've never been able to do that. But this works for me. I think every writer has to find kind of the way that works for them. But that worked for me. But what I do when I choose a topic, I kind of just lay out the ideas, not necessarily titles of chapters, but ideas of the chapters that seem to me to be logical, and then just kind of work on them, one at a time as I work my way through it. And then, of course, I try to use a good number of illustrations of real people, real situations. Never using people's real names, of course,
Sure.
but I think people identify with real life situations.
In those instances, do you ever come across writer's block? And if so, how do you navigate that?
I haven't had a lot of that. I think there've been a few times, but usually what I do when I sit down to write, I say to God, I'm asking you to give me wisdom on this topic, bring to my mind things that I need to remember. So give me wisdom, because I learned a long time ago what Jesus said is true. Without me, you can do nothing. That's what he said. I learned that pretty young in my life. So I don't try to do anything without him. I just always ask him to give me wisdom. And I've done that in the counseling room as well, when I'd be sitting there in those early days and people would present their situation, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue. I just send up a silent prayer. I said, Lord, give me wisdom. What would be helpful to this couple? And I have ideas that come to my mind that I would not have thought about on my own. So I just think all of us, no matter what we're doing, we need to recognize we got to have God's help if we're going to do anything worthwhile.
You, in Five Traits of a Healthy Family, you wrote about a young man named John who asked to be included in your family for a year. He didn't have the best home life and example of a healthy family and a marriage, and he wanted to learn from your family and your marriage. What was your initial reaction when you got that request?
He was a recent college grad, and he'd moved to our city. He and two or three other guys were living in our city that summer, and he had a job in the fall to start teaching school locally. And so I knew him, at least some knowledge of him those 3 months. But when he asked that of me, of course, I was shocked, because I never ever anticipated anybody asking if they could come and live with us. So I said what I think every wise husband would say. I said, "Well, John, let me talk to Carolyn about that." So I told Carolyn what he was requesting, and she said, "Well, Gary, that might be good." I said, "Really? You feel that way about it?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Look, he grew up in a dysfunctional family, and maybe just being around us would be this would be a good time." And I said, "Well, what do you think about the kids?" And she said, "Well, I don't know. Let's ask them. So we talked to the kids about it, and the kids said, "Oh, we'd like to have a big brother in the house," you know. So we did. And he looks back now, and he told me some time ago. He said, "Gary, I cannot imagine what my life would have been like if I had not lived with y'all that year." He said it gave me a picture, of a healthy family. And he said, and of course he's grown now and married and has kids of his own. And so, yeah, I've never had anybody ask me that since then. And at this juncture, I probably would have to say no. I would say ask Carolyn. I'm pretty sure Carolyn would say no. but at that juncture in our lives, it was a good thing for us and for him.
Oh, what a gift for both of you, and for the kids too. I think just having that request made upon your family had to have been pretty flattering and humbling to know that you could make a positive impact in that way just by leading your lives the way that you do.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't change anything when he was there. We did the same thing with the kids. The routines that we had with them, he just was a part of it.
Oh, so neat. The first trait you outline of a healthy family is service. And why is it that you believe service is so important to a healthy family?
Well, I believe that an attitude of service is the foundation stone for everything else, not only in marriage, but in the whole of the Christian life. Jesus said about himself, "I did not come to be served. I came to serve and to give my life a ransom for others." And he's our model. And I think every Christian that's really seeking to walk with God will pretty soon realize this is the lifestyle of the Christian. We're here to serve other people. And so in a family, I think this is the foundation for having a healthy family. That the husband has the attitude, I'm here to serve my wife. I'm here to do everything I can to help her become the person she believes God wants her to be. And as parents, then, we have an attitude of service to our children. That we want to serve them and help them grow up to be, adults that will make a difference in the world. And then we teach that to our children. As they get appropriate ages, we're giving them things where they can serve us or serve each other. And then we take it outside the family so that the family gets the picture. Our family is about serving other people. And they're observing mom and dad doing that, and then they're doing it with us and certain things that we do. And so they grow up to have what I think is the Christian attitude. We're here to serve others. And so, it's very rewarding. Look at our kids now. Of course, they're grown now, and our daughter has her own, and her cousin have their own children. Our son and his wife couldn't have children, but they love children and work with other people's children. But to see them as adults with that same attitude of serving other people, it's very, very rewarding.
For families who are curious to get into service more with their children, what are some ways in which you found it beneficial for families to serve within the community?
Well, obviously it depends on their age, but I remember when our children were, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, 13, long in there, uh, I would get them in the car and put rakes in the trunk of the car and drive through the neighborhood in the fall when the leaves had all fallen and look for yards that had not been raked or blown. And back in those days, people used rakes more than they did blowers. And I would knock on the door and say, "Hi, I'm Gary Chapman. I live down the street here, and I'm trying to teach my children how to serve other people. And if you don't mind, we'd like to rake your leaves." And they would say what? And I'd repeat my little speech. And they'd say, "Oh, I'll pay you to rake my leaves. I've been trying to find someone to rake my leaves." I said, No, I don't want money. I'm just trying to teach my children how to serve other people. We never had anyone that wouldn't let us rake the leaves.
Oh,
And the kids loved it. And the part they really like is when you get the leaves all in a big pile, you jump in the pile. But it can be taking kids to a food pantry, where you're sorting food for people that need food. It can be anything that's helping somebody else. Uh, I remember when my son was a teenager, on Saturday night, I used to go down once a month on Saturday night to the juvenile detention center and play ping pong with those young guys and talk to them. And so I started taking him with me. We'd talk to the kid, we'd play ping pong and so forth. But they would tell us, one of them would tell us his story, how he got there. And we'd ride home and just chat a little bit about it. Say, that's sad, man. He's just about your age, and he's incarcerated because he broke the law. So it's just but and my son's still great at that. That's what he does his whole life. I mean, he's a helper, and my daughter's a medical doctor. She delivers high risk babies, and loves what she does. So, yeah.
Yeah, that foundation is so important. And one of the things I miss the most, I was a teacher in my previous career, and I taught in the alternative school realm. So students who are at risk of not graduating. And we had a mentoring program that my husband participated in with me. And it was just luncheon with the teens once a month, and just mentoring, talking, hearing about the problems. And it was so fun for he and I to do that together. And we've talked recently about wanting to do that again. And, with the kids' schedules right now, it's not quite as easy, but that is, it gave us just as much as it gave the teens. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second trait you discuss of a healthy family is intimacy. And being that intimacy seems to be something that's so easy for couples in the initial parts of a relationship, what do you see are common factors that lead to the demise of intimacy in a marriage?
Well, I think first of all, many men, when you say the word intimacy, their idea is, oh, that means the sexual part of marriage. But the first thing I'm trying to say in the book is it's far more than that. It's intellectual intimacy. It's having talks like you did when you were dating. So you hear what each other's thinking, your ideas, your visions for the future, and all those kind of things. It's emotional intimacy where you're sharing your emotions. Whether they're positive or negative, you're sharing them with each other. So because that's a part of our life. And it's social intimacy. You're doing things with other people as a couple. And it's spiritual intimacy. You're sharing your journey with God with each other. And then, physical intimacy, to be sure. But if you don't have intimacy in these other areas, then the sexual part of the marriage is not going to be what God designed it to be. So if you first get that picture, and then I think we just recognize, look, this is the fundamental relationship in this family, is you and me. So let's keep it open. Let's keep close to each other. Let's be honest and open. Let's process life together. And in a healthy marriage, that's what it looks like.
And how do you start to bridge that gap? Because I see this happen with couples and in talking with friendships, as if the wife doesn't feel emotionally connected, she doesn't want to be physically intimate, and vice versa with the husband. So how does that bend start to happen? And how have you helped coach partners to start to come together again?
Yeah, well, I think you have to recognize that if there's not intimacy in these other areas, we're not going to have what we want to have in the sexual part of our marriage. And if we just ignore that and it's just sexual part's all we've got going, it's just a physical function that it's not a healthy marriage. So I think we start by acknowledging that maybe we've drifted from where we were, and let's make some decisions on what we need to do that will move us back. And you start taking steps, whether that's a weekly date night, which you do something out, just the two of you together, every week, or whether it's a daily sit down and listen time, whether it's 15 minutes or 30 minutes, that we just sit down and hear and just listen and tell me what happened in your life today. How do you feel about what happened in your life today? I mean, that's just a simple place to start. And so we just start wherever, but we've got to set aside time to keep the rest of our relationship close, or we will not have what God intended us to have in this area of our lives.
My parents have been married 51 years, and my mom has said several times that some of their best conversations happen in the car. And perhaps it's that where you're not having to look right into each other's face. And if men have a harder time emoting or being vulnerable with that face-to-face contact, it allows them a little bit more to get comfortable. And I always thought that was interesting and good advice. If it's on a car trip where you're connecting or something, find time to connect in those opportunities.
Yeah, wherever it is, whatever works for the individual couple,
Right,
just so long as we keep the doors open.
right, right. Whatever form. Yeah. Uh, you discussed the importance of parents who guide and the challenge of creative teaching. And we have two children. Our daughter is a competitive dancer. Our son is a tri-sport athlete. And so, many nights it feels like we're ships passing in the night with different schedules. And we only have two kids. We have,
Yeah.
friends who have 3, 4 kids. So what are some practical things families can do to carve out quality time amidst these busy schedules?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge for each family, and it's different for each family because of the work schedules of the mom and the dad, and also the schedules, as you mentioned, of the children, because many times they're in different interests, and so sometimes we even have to split up, and one goes with one to the event, and the other goes with the other one to the event. Uh, but I like to remind parents, they're only there for 18 years. So just keep that in the back of your mind. You don't have to do this forever. Uh, so uh, spending time with the children is exceedingly important. Just like God loved us and gave us rules to live by, God says, here's things, don't do these things, but do these things. Every commandment of God in the Bible grew out of his love for us. He wants us to have the best possible life on earth as well as spend eternity with him. Well, as parents, he's our model. So we want to have guidelines that we give our children. These are some things we don't do. These are some things we do. And then we want to tell them what the consequences will be if they don't follow the rule. And children will understand that. My son, for example, when he was, I forget how old he was, but we got him a bicycle. And we said, now, every night before you come in, you have to put the bicycle in the shed. Don't leave it out all night. And if you do leave it out, you don't get to ride the bicycle the next day. Okay? Well, yeah, it's okay, Dad. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, simple. So the first time it happened that he left it outside, and I said to, Derek, I said, son, remember you were supposed to put the bicycle in the shed at night, and you didn't. So you remember the consequences, right? You don't get to ride the bicycle today. He said, Dad, he said, all the guys are going to be riding this afternoon. And Dad, well, let me ride today, Dad, and I won't ride tomorrow. And I said, Derek, I can understand how you're feeling, man. And if I were in your age and in your position, I'd probably feel the same way, man. I'm going to be out there riding with my friends. I said, but Derek, we have to follow the guidelines. And I said, I love you too much not to let you follow the guidelines. So I'm sorry, but you can't ride today. He never left his bike out another time.
It's not something.
It's suffering the consequences that children learn to obey their parents, and the parents are the authority in the home. Children are not to be running homes. Parents are the ones. We know more than they do, and we want to have guidelines that are going to help them become healthy adults down the road.
Yeah, it's so true. In that section where you're discussing this, you talk about obeying and honoring the parents, and I think obey, that even just that term has gotten a bad rap in our society. And I mean, obey really just means to behave in accordance with a general principle. So if you think about modern society, I think part of the problem is we don't have general principles as much as we used to. And so I think it's even all the more important that we establish those in the family, because, if you're not, what is the saying about can't stand for something, you'll fall for anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think it seems as though children are more disobedient or not honoring their elders and their parents as in years past?
Well, I think a part of it is there are so many homes in our culture where there is no father in the home. It's a single mom. And I have great admiration for single moms because it wasn't designed to be that way. The plan, the healthy plan is there's a husband and there's a wife, there's a mother and there's a daddy to work together as a team. But I think sometimes because of the absence of parents in the home to be a part of helping them live by guidelines, and maybe they disrespect. Sometimes if the father is out of the picture, they don't have respect for fathers, and they don't even know what a father's supposed to be like. And I have public school teachers say to me, Gary, I spend half of my time just trying to keep order in the classroom so I can teach, because the children have no respect for the authority. And because they didn't learn in the home that mom is the authority. Mom and dad are the authorities. Or if it's this mom, then mom is the authority. Mm-hmm. And so, I have to obey what mom says. And if they learn to respect the parents as being the authority in the home, then they take that to school with them. So I think that's why we've had so much trouble in schools. It's because they've never learned to respect authority of anybody. And you go up to adulthood, and what happens is what's happening in our country today. People do crazy, wild things, and think nothing of it. And now it seems like the culture is just kind of affirming that. You can rob stores and it won't matter.
Absolutely.
Well, it's sad. It's sad, but it all grows out of the home. That's why a healthy family is fundamental to the larger culture.
And you do such a great job of explaining how to set those guidelines and structure with love and with understanding. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, you even give examples as to if you are feeling yourself getting frustrated and you're shouting, that's not the way to handle it. Try staying calm, validating their feelings. I know, like you did with your son, I know this is tough. If I were you, I would want to ride my bike too. But this is for your own good, and I promise you probably won't leave your bike out again.
Which That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. And also, if you can wrap the discipline in their love language, it's so much the better. If their language is words, you can say, Johnny, I'm so proud of you because you normally keep the rules, but this time you broke it.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to suffer the consequences, but listen, I love you, man. Yeah, I'm proud of you. So whatever, you kind of wrap it in love, and they feel the love. I don't mean they'll be happy that they have to suffer the consequences, but they, in their heart, they understand, this is right. This is what should be happening.
Yeah. The love languages. So first of all, I reference it so many times on the podcast. I think it's just such an important tool to be able to know with your partner, with your kids, with your coworkers, family members. When I was teaching, I taught a communications class, and my students took the love language quiz, and then they'd be texting their results to their friends or their family members. And it was always so fun to see those aha moments click.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is I was always physical touch and words of affirmation. And since becoming a parent, my acts of service has gone up significantly.
Yes.
Common?
Yes. Yeah. I think seasons of life and circumstances, another love language will jump to the top. As you say, acts of service may not have been the primary language, but when you have 2 preschool children, it's going to jump to the top because you're overwhelmed. You need more help. So, I think circumstances and seasons of life, another love language can jump to the top. But I do think that the love language tends to stay with us, throughout life, with those exceptions, of course.
In troubled marriages, when you saw people starting to speak each other's love languages more effectively, did you see a remarkable turnaround? Was that part of your early work that led to the book?
Yeah, radical changes. I mean, I've had couples who, once I share the concept and they take the quiz and learn each other's language, and I discuss it with them and challenge them to go home and try it for the next 3 weeks, come back after 3 weeks and say, Gary, this is changing everything. I mean, we feel differently toward each other now. This is making a big difference in our life. And when I do marriage conferences, which I do on Saturdays, 10 or 12 of those a year, my publisher sets those up all over the country on Saturdays. I'll have half a dozen people come up at least and say, Gary, we just wanted to tell you that book saved our marriage. We were at the end. We didn't see any hope. And we read that book and the lights came on and we realized how we missed each other. And we took the quiz and we learned each other's language. We started speaking it. It literally saved our marriage. So yeah, that book's been tremendously rewarding. And because one of our basic needs is to feel loved, by the significant people in our lives. And I say to parents, the question is not, do you love your children? The question is, do your children feel loved? So let's learn their primary language. Let's give heavy doses of that. But let's also speak the other four because we would like for the child to learn how to receive and give love in all five languages. That's the healthiest adult. And most of us did not receive all five growing up. So we come to adulthood and we don't know how to speak some of them. But the good news is we can learn as an adult when we see how important it is. We can learn to speak a language we didn't receive.
What is your love language, if I might ask?
Words of affirmation, and my wife is acts of service.
Okay.
So I do wash dishes, I do vacuum floors, I do take out the trash. And she tells me I'm the greatest husband in the world. It's a hyperbole, but it feels good to me.
So this, you have, sorry, I've got I was nervous my computer was going to get knocked down. I've got a big Newfoundland roaming around over here.
Oh.
Are there love languages that are just so incompatible that it'd be too difficult to have a good relationship with?
I don't think so. I do think that if your number 5, the one that's least important to you, is number 1 for your spouse, there is a learning curve. No question about it. Because first of all, you can't imagine why that would be important to anyone. But if you accept the reality that it is important to them, then you can learn to speak that language. And that's the good news. I've had people say to me, I had a husband say some time ago, he said, Gary, he said, my wife's language is words of affirmation. I don't know how to do that. He said, I didn't receive any positive words growing up. All I was ever told was I was lazy and I wasn't going to amount to anything. And he said, I don't know how to do that. And I said, well, you are where you are. We can't change our history. I said, but here's the good news. You can learn to speak this language as an adult, even though you didn't receive it. And I said, tell me 3 things that your wife is good at. And he thought a moment. He said, well, she's a good cook, and she's a good school teacher, and she's a good mother. And I wrote out 2 or 3 sentences beside each one of those. I said, now here's your assignment, like on the cooking. Honey, I haven't told you this, but I really appreciate all the meals you cook. You're a good cook. And just 2 or 3 sentences. I said, go home twice a day, get in a room by yourself, and read these out loud so you hear yourself saying these things. I said, when you come back next week, I want you to be able to say them without looking at your notes. And he came back and he did. I said, okay, here's your assignment. The next 3 weeks, you give her one of these each week. I don't care what order, but you just use one of these each week. And he came back and I said, well, did you do it? He said, yeah, I did it. I said, how'd your wife respond? He said, well, on the 3rd week, she said to me, what's going on with you? I have never heard you give me so many compliments. I said, what did you say? I said, well, honey, you remember we read that book and we took that quiz and your language is words of affirmation. And I'm just trying to learn how to speak those words because I do like them. She said, oh, that's so wonderful. So that's the good news. Even if it's a learning curve, you can learn. And if you understand why it's so important, you're motivated to learn to speak their language.
Absolutely. Well, there was a research study came out by Pew Research Center, and they found that religious people are happier. And clearly, with your background and the way you lead your life, I know you would agree with that. Why do you think that it is a spiritual connection is the foundation of happiness? Because that really is the undertone of what you bring forward.
Yeah. I think because by nature, we are all self-centered. Now, there's a good part to that. It means we feed ourselves, we get exercises, we get sleep, etc. But when that becomes selfishness, that is, our attitude is, I'm in this world to get something out of it for myself. And if I'm married, I'm in this marriage for you to make me happy. And this is where so many of the world is today. And so they say to their spouse after some time, I'm out of here because you're not making me happy. Well, the true Christian cannot live with that attitude. Because I mentioned earlier, Christ himself came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for us. So we don't have to give our lives a ransom. He did that already. But we're here to serve others. And as Christians, to a greater or lesser degree, we begin to see this is where God wants me to be. And we start asking God, give me that attitude. I want to have the attitude of Christ. Peter said about Jesus, he went about doing good. That's what God wants to be able to be said about us. He went about doing good. He went about doing good. So I think Christians have outside help. And we can honestly say to God, Lord, I don't have very positive feelings right now toward my spouse or somebody else. But I know you love them. So I'm asking you, Romans chapter 5 and verse 5, pour your spirit into your love into my heart by your spirit. Let me be your agent for loving them. So you move out, not with positive feelings necessarily, but you move out with the power of God's help to communicate love in their language, even though you don't feel love toward them. But what happens is it stimulates love in them emotionally, and then they speak your language, and now the emotions come back. So we don't let emotions control our behavior. We let the Spirit and the Word of God guide our behavior. And thankfully, God will help us do what's right.
Mm. Thank you so much for that. I can't imagine anybody tuning in who's not going to leave feeling totally inspired and uplifted. And I'm just so grateful for the work that you have done. The love languages has been a part of my life for so long. And the 5 traits of a healthy family, I can't wait for more people to tune into that and to learn from you. Your work is so important, and I really thank you for your time and for sharing with us today.
Well, thank you, Lindsay. It was good chatting with you. Keep up the good work of helping people as well as trying to enrich your marriage. And, in families, we want to keep growing. Otherwise, we just drift and it regresses. So if we can take a step or two along the way and keep growing, that's what we want for all of us and all of your listeners as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Gary. I appreciate it.
Thank you.